Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Joining us this evening is political commentator Larry So. Mr. So has strong ties to both SARs, having been in Macau since 2002, but originating in Hong Kong. He joins us at a turbulent and exciting time for both SARs, as one has seen nearly a quarter of its population take to the streets in protest of proposed legislation, and another begins the selection process for its next chief executive. Thank you for being on the show. We are faced with some very, very interesting events that have been happening recently in both SARs. And I'd like to start with the one which has seen the most international attention. Even some of the smaller news outlets are picking up on the fact that around 25% of Hong Kong's population took to the streets in protest of the Fugitive Extradition Bill amendments. They have been indefinitely suspended, but does that mean they have been cancelled?
Not exactly cancelled in that sense. It has been just put aside for quite maybe by the time next year, by the end of next year, it could be expire. But then now, expire means that this particular format, this particular law in their wordings, that can no longer be can bring it back to let's go. But then if you change the format or you change some of the wordings, but with the essential elements, everything inside, they can still come back again. So that's why the young people right now in Hong Kong, they are saying that this thing should be cancelled. Cancelled in the sense that they should never bring back to the let's go for any discussion, meaning that, well, this law cannot and should not and will not be happen in Hong Kong.
Now, we had three demands that were put forth by Joshua Wong, who is a student activist who was just recently released from prison.
Yes.
And he had said that up until 5 p.m. today, which is a deadline that has already expired, even by the time that we're recording this, that he had three demands that Carrie Lam step down, that they remove the riot label of the event on the 12th, and that they retract the bill. In regards to the first, do you think that, for one, Carrie Lam will step down, and for two, that she should step down?
Now, first of all, is she going to step down? First of all, I don't think so. Given that, well, with the kind of training that she got as an administrative officer, and as she said, she's been in the civil service for 40 years, and the kind of training that she got in the past, she's not that easy to say sorry, and not that easy to say, quote, step down. And then secondly, with the central blessing of all the things that she's been doing and done, and I think the central, they won't say, or they won't put any pressure on her to say anything, you should step down. Now, by stepping down means that we got a lot of problem in Hong Kong in terms of one country, two system. Now, we have one CEO step down, Mr. Dong. And then we got another one, Mr. Donald Zhang. He got in problems with, quote unquote, corruptions. And the last one, the CY, and she got a pretty negative image and negative reputation. I mean, if she, and this one, if she really stepped down, look at the face of the central leadership, and especially, I mean, they want to talk to Taiwan, saying that, well, one country, two system works. And in fact, with the whole thing, the Hong Kong that happens in the past week, we have been giving a lot of votes to to Madam Choi, because she's campaigning for the next term, and people say that she doesn't got a chance, but not now, because she's the one who stick out to say one country system doesn't work, and Hong Kong show that, well, it is not working to that extent. But if we are going to say that, or if really Carrie Lam step down, that means it doesn't work at all. So
do you think that she was, for one, pressured into apologizing by the central government, and for two, why did she have to apologize twice if her stance didn't change in between the first apology and the second?
No, the second kind of apologies, I think, the pressure from the community, the pressure from not only the central government, but from the peer, from
the pro-establishment camp.
Yes, as well as the administrative council. So, I mean, now, all this pressure put on him is that now, if she show some kind of attitude to the people, saying that, she really doesn't want that things happen, that will at least, buy back some of the votes or some of the people's heart, and especially for those who are in the pro-establishment camp, because they've been telling us again and again that only a quarter of the people comes up for the march, and 3/4 of the people are still at home, and they might support you. So, I mean, we know that's not very logical, but still, if you look at the other side of the publicity, they do have this kind of saying. But anyway, now, this kind of saying is that now, if you kind of showing some attitude to the people, and the people will say, okay, we forgive you, and then, okay, let everything hopefully settle. And then there's one thing very important is that the first apology, so-called, is not widely accepted, even though she cries. But then, as you said, crocodile's clear. But then, even though she cried, but then it is her, I shouldn't use the word arrogance, but then the way that she,
Yeah, she's very hard-nosed in how she faces these issues, and responding to reporters' questions and even individual questions. She's very intense.
And that's why they say it's not a kind of genuine, the kind of apologies that the people demand. So she tried to come up with a second one, and it was, and of course the general public doesn't accept that apologies either, because after all, in the Chinese way of the apologies, at least you should bow. But
there's a lot of controversy about that, about just the physical aspect of choosing not to bow.
I mean, the body language in itself. I mean, the bowing is a body language that means that you're sorry. But then you still stand very strict and keep telling people, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But then people will try to say, are you really sorry about it?
Speaking of actions being louder than words, the people, they estimated around 1 million in the first protest and 2 million in the second protest. These also had people from Macau. There are also people from Macau that joined that protest. Under I understand from your understanding, under the one country, two systems, they don't count as foreign influences within the protests. Do you believe that there was a foreign influence on the protests? And if so, was it stronger in the first or the second large protest?
Now, first of all, I do think in all protests, in all demonstrations, in all these, that definitely there are some, different groups and who do receive, subsidies and helps from the so-called foreign parties. Now, with millions of people participating in this, if you are telling me there isn't any, well, I'm not going to believe it. First of all, and now. The point is, which one is stronger? Of course, the second one is much, much stronger in the sense that because a lot of people are being mobilized and a lot of people are coming up. But then, now, one thing for sure is that we do find that the orderly or the kind of the manner that these young people produce the show on the TV that we can see is much, much better than the first one.
Yes, definitely.
So even though there is, we know there is the so-called the foreign intervention, but the self-control of the local, and especially the young people, and many of the local groups that really comes up, and with all the groups that including, there wasn't that many in the past. All these, a lot of the religious groups that comes up.
Yeah, Hallelujah, Praise the Lord was one of the main anthems.
Yeah, I mean, these are the people who really show them that they support, and these are the control. And in fact, these are that kind of control we are looking at. Now they say, we come up and we are having, a service, a mass, and we are having, all these prayers. So really gather, have all these people come around them. They promote solidarity. And with this sense, the so-called the foreign, they try to instigate, all these kind of negative violence and whatnot. No, it's not that easy. So that's very, if you're talking about really intervention from the foreign, there is, or else we won't have, we are talking millions of people coming out.
Yes. Yes. In the first protest, which has been labeled a riot by the authorities in Hong Kong, did you see police brutality?
Well, from the TV, yes. No, I wasn't there. I should say I'm not there exactly at that time. So what I can see is only on the TV, and what I can see is on the TV footage, as well as some from friends who happens to be around, and they do have their own footage. There is. I mean, there was.
In regards to the police force itself, there are a lot of conspiracy theories going around in regards to the tags of the police officers, that they had been visible in the umbrella movement and they are no longer visible now. The excuse given was that there is no space on the uniforms. Is that legitimate in any way?
Naturally, it shouldn't be legitimate. I mean, for those, if you claim to be a civil servant, you must have, some identification. That identification got to produce, and especially when you're asked, and especially when you are on duty to do, perform some of quote unquote official jobs. Now, of course, that part is official jobs, and then all you have is, is your gears. I mean, so-called uniform, but that is not a uniform in the sense that you don't have a tag, you don't have a number, you don't have any identifier. So that is, I mean, to me, it's not very logical in the sense that when the chief of police, the other day, he answered the electrical member that we got no space and for any tag. I mean, that is very, in the sense that it's ridiculous. I mean, everywhere, unless you are secret op. So are you talking about secret, these people, this tactical force are secret operation? No, they shouldn't be. So
they shouldn't be?
They shouldn't.
So if they're not displaying identification, does that leave open the possibility that they can be trained in the use of force, but might not necessarily be registered as Hong Kong police officers?
Now, officially, they shouldn't be. But then if it's a secret operation or, intelligence and all these things, something like CIA or whatnot, but then, first of all, what we know, these are from the tactical force, special force in Hong Kong, and then these are not the intelligence service. So there's no way you can tell. I mean, there's no way you can say that they can be excused without any label. So that is totally not acceptable.
We've had the protests and we've had the immediate reaction in which they said that they would shelve the bill. We've had Article 23 shelved since 2003.
Yes.
Now, what about there's other legislation that they're also trying to push through, such as the National Anthem bill. And they've said that they can pause on this until summer. You had made, Macau has already passed a similar bill with very, very little feedback
no
whatsoever.
problem about it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. In regards to you'd mentioned to us actually after the riots that it could be a little bit complicated for the civil movements themselves to maintain the pressure, to maintain they can't be in the streets every day. So could this be a stall tactic? How long could something like this, Joshua Wong is calling for another protest not only today but tomorrow. How long could this go on for?
Now, they can't go that very long. And for them, fortunately, it's summer, and the summer vacation is coming up, and the university, they already got the holidays already, and the secondary school, well, eventually in a couple of weeks of time, so they can maintain a little bit, during the summer vacation. But then the problem is that if you have all these young people coming up, every day, it's quite impossible. I mean, the momentum, you can't keep it this way.
Exactly.
And you don't have that kind of issues or that can motivate the young people to come out again and again and again. Now, a small group of them, yes, but then if you're talking about millions, forget it, not even thousands. Now look at the Occupy Central. At first we have, hundreds of thousands, but then it all the way drop to, a couple of hundreds. That is the normal case in any kind of demonstration or protest. I mean, this is a basic rule for any protest or demonstration. You have to do it fast and quick, and then go.
Yeah.
This is
and
it.
Despite the fact that they're organized and they have water, food distribution, they've obviously organized themselves in terms of videos that we've seen of them handling tear gas canisters and things like that. Despite that organization, it's inevitable that it will trickle down.
Yes, they do have this kind of organization, but then it will, it would deteriorate in the sense that, because once the action stalls, it is to the advantage of the oppressor, not the oppressed. Now, this is the rules of any engagement and the rules of organizing, and it is what is by Solinsky. I mean, this is the founder of the any organizing in the Western country. He said that never prolong your action.
Yeah. And we've seen that people who have had their own actions prolonged, maybe against their own will, are the 32 that were arrested on Wednesday. 15 of them supposedly involved in violent crimes, of which 5 of them were arrested for rioting. That's one of the important issues that they want to drop. They wanted to drop that. And also, in response, 34 complaints have been received by police in relation to operations. We're talking about some people supposedly being arrested in hospital, some of them being dragged out of ambulances. It's quite strong. We, however, do see that there are local participants in Macau who chose to get on the ferry, get on the bus, go and participate, and go and demonstrate in that action. Is it our place to protest? Is it the place of Macau residents to protest something that's happening in Hong Kong? Under one country, two systems.
Yes. Now, these are the young people in Hong Kong and in Macau. Now they do. Especially for the young people, and we are promoting. In fact, the governments, the two governments, are promoting all the exchange in the Greater Bay Area, and we do have a lot of this kind of exchange, especially among the young people, the university students. Now they do form their own connection. They do form the kind of they support each other. So with the social media, everybody knows what happened. So they go over there to support, and I won't say they don't have any place for them, but then, well, it is a supporting role that our young people, they try to demonstrate they do support the issue in itself, and they found that the issue, they might not have it in Macau in the same sense, but then these are our friends and we should support them. So I won't say they do have a role, but I would say that it is their conscience and it is their friendliness that they do support the so-called democratic movement in Hong Kong.
Well, they do have a stake, particularly in this. They're talking about how this will affect Hong Kong's financial stability, and the Macau Pataka is loosely pegged to the Hong Kong dollar, which is also pegged to the United States dollar. So there is an economic effect directly on these people. What about completely switching topics? We have political activism, which seems to go in spurts and valleys in terms of Macau. We pay attention certain times, but mostly when it's issues which are relating to housing, infrastructure, whether they'll give us 10,000 patakas every year, issues like that. We have a chief executive election, which is going to be happening. Fifth-term chief executive, he'll be the third chief executive overall. There's supposedly 4 candidates. Do you see anyone as being particularly stronger than the others?
Well, of course, we are only talking about there is only one.
Who has officially announced the candidacy, yes.
And the rest, well, I can't see that they can, get enough votes, or, I can't see that they can get enough solicit enough votes or any support from the college. So I'm only talking about one, and I'm not going to talk about any other.
But he had his press conference the other day announcing that he was going to be having his bid. Everyone knew already. He'd already resigned from his and from the AL and also from his position in China as well. But he was very vague on details.
Yes.
Do you think that he's going to be providing us more details? Do you think he needs to provide us with more details?
Of course,
in terms of the public.
I mean, if he's going to
he can
tell
still
us,
get the vote without having to give us any details at all.
well, yes. I mean, frankly speaking, if he do that, well, he can. But then, of course, now he's trying to advocate and telling us that he will create an accountable government to the people of Macau. So being accountable, well, of course, you have to do all these necessary jobs, including that you have to have a detailed platform. But right now, of course, he only declared his intention. So that platform is not necessary. It's only a manifesto. And manifesto is saying that, well, why does he want to run, and in what particular reason and what particular area he would pay more attention, but of course not in details. So that's why the other day when he had the press con and we look at it, these are all vague terms and big items, but all these things we need details.
And given that he was, up until the other day, the president of the Legislative Assembly, given his position as the president of the Legislative Assembly for so long, he saw all of these issues. He saw all of these bills be presented. Some didn't pass. Some didn't pass in the way that let's say, had been desired by certain factions within society. We don't have a cap on rent, for example.
Yes.
Do you think that his role, him playing that role, him acting in that function for so long, has helped him to better understand the average person in Macau?
Oh, definitely.
But will that be reflected in his policy, do you think, going forward?
I really hope so, in a sense. Well, now, he's been criticizing the administration in the past that, well, the administration is not efficient and sometimes it's not even transparent. So, well, in his manifesto, he did say that he's trying to create a government more efficient in the sense that, especially among producing the laws and all these things, and in addition, he also said that a kind of transparent government that transparent in the sense it will be more clean government in a sense. So that means the corruption and all these things, he's going to deal with it. And I hope he really is going to deal with it.
Well, he has a chance to, because he can shuffle up the secretaries. He can shuffle up his cabinet. But there are some very key things that are going to be happening. Obviously, there's visible things such as infrastructure, the construction of the LRT, ongoing construction of the LRT, and the gaming license retendering, which are going to happen in the next term. They won't happen under this chief executive. Is it in his advantage to maintain certain secretaries? And if so, which secretaries would it be best to retain?
Now, I think, well, definitely he's not going to change, overnight that all of them they be gone. I mean, he can, but then, as you said, now we do have a lot of infrastructure things going on. So the one who's responsible for that may have to stay, a little bit, a longer, at least, a term or at least half a term. And we are talking about that is more important is the gaming industry.
Yes.
So we have to license, renew, and all these things, and it really takes time and it really takes a lot of expertise and knowledge to know about that. And Mr. Hall, he himself is not particularly related with the gaming industry. I think he got to rely on somebody.
Yes.
So this is a person he may have to have him to stay at least for a term, or at least the license things. Totally complete and settled. So that will be, as I said, at least half of his term. So these are the two persons, definitely he need them to stay around.
Now we are unable to directly vote. We are not unable to have universal suffrage here so far. Interestingly enough, when questioned about it, some of the members of the 400-strong electoral committee did express that they were willing to have universal suffrage in Macau, to have one vote, each person's vote count towards the eventual chief executive. But they say that we're we're too young in terms of our civic education. Looking at what's happening in Hong Kong, looking at the fact that there is Macau participation in these protests, and given your extensive experience in social work and on the ground with these people, is that accurate to say that we're not civically educated enough?
No, I mean, that is not fair to say that. But then, of course, we don't have that experience, yes. But if we haven't tried the first time, we will never have that kind of experience. So that's unfair to say we were young or we don't have that kind of experience. We have to go through the process, first of all. And it is, clearly stated in the basic law that we will and we should have the so-called democratic kind of universal suffrage. Not exactly that term, but then that the concept of having a democratic government. So that would imply at least is a kind of representative government and universal suffrage. So by saying that we don't have that kind of experience, we are only saying that we don't want that kind of government. But who are these people who are saying that? Because they are the interested parties, because they have the votes already, and they may be, or they may not have that kind of vote, but they have that kind of influence. But then the people, common people, grassroots people, they don't have that kind of power, they don't have that kind of influence, but they do have votes, and that can become power and influence to them. So to be fair, people should have. And then we are looking at it now. 20 years has been passed, since the reunification, and I think it's about time for the CEO to look into this aspect. But then, from the manifesto of Mr. Hall, now there's one thing interesting: we haven't seen any wordings, not on concept, but not even the wordings on democratic government, or any wordings on the political reform. But maybe now we have to wait a little bit on the platform. But one thing for sure, I would really like to see that he would talk a little bit about on this aspect, because now we are talking about 50 years, there won't be any changes. But then by the end of his term, it's already half of the 50 years. So we don't have time. And if we don't give us the chance, we will always be young and immature and inexperienced.
Yes,
that's
without
not
practice.
Fair. I mean, that's not fair.
But in the recent NPC, we saw that particular word, democracy or democratically, was also removed or was also absent from some of the discourses of some of the mainland's top officials.
Yes.
So that doesn't really give a very strong tone for Macau to then create its own avenue. And Macau is known for being rebellious.
I know, but then at least a lot of the young people, even up to now, for all that experience and what they have learned from the unification, they were told that we will have that kind of government. So unless something happened and we simply forget everything, I mean, these things are still there. And this kind of thinking are still in the people. And it's not that easy to erase it unless being by force.
Well, speaking of force, what about control tactics? We've had recent legislation which has been proposed also when we're talking about the civil defense legislation.
Yes.
It had already undergone its first reading, and it has this very interesting parts which are kind of shoved in the middle, in which the chief executive, there can be declared emergency situations of a public nature, and that's within the law itself. That is one of the articles of law. But then the emergency situation is only defined by an administrative regulation.
Exactly.
And that implies that it can also be altered very quickly.
Yes.
Without having to necessarily go through our own legislative body.
Exactly.
Is that at all intimidating towards potential protesters? I mean, we saw 20,000 people took to the streets a number of years ago to protest the compensation and retirement package for the chief executives, for the former chief executives. Would people be more wary of doing so? We're in the context of trying to repress, potentially, through legislation being imposed in Macau, and seeing our SAR neighbor taking to the street and being successful in a way.
Yes.
So what does that mean for the minds of local people who want to be democratically involved?
First of all, the experience in Hong Kong, they do, boost the ego. The egos of all these people in Macau, especially young people, say that, well, if we are organized and if we are united, we can press for change, first of all. And of course, with the civil law that just now mentioned, they can declare emergency quite easily because it's only administratively they do it. Now, in essence, we understand that this is the flexibility that we need to have because we are looking at emergency. Emergency come out and we have to have another AL meeting. That will take a lot of time.
Yes.
So, but
because
then
they already take a long time.
exactly. So it's not that easy. So administratively, now the power should give it to the administration for declaring any emergency, but we should have control over here. Now the point is that we do not know what kind of control we have, and do we have any specific criteria that really guide the administrator to say that this is an emergency. Now, this is what we need in particular, and in all these, so-called guidelines should be detailed and very, very concrete terms, saying that, well, if we follow all these things, if we satisfy all these criteria, then we can declare, just like the Americans say, the DEFCON 1 and DEFCON 2, that kind of, different levels of emergency. So I think this is the power of the administrator, yes. And we should give it to him because the flexibility and the time constraint, but with guidance.
Do you think that our current Legislative Assembly is able to pressure those formulating these administrative regulations to accurately define all of these within the best interest of the people, of all factions of Macau? Not only certain select factions of Macau?
With certain selection of Macau, that's easy. For all factions of Macau, that won't be that easy because we still don't have the kind of direct election. If you're talking about direct elections, we don't even go to half of the AL. So that's not that easy. But then that will be in the interest of the people, and we are looking at it, and the people will be asking, and I hope not. And kind of experience that we learned from Hong Kong will happen here again. That in Macau, it's not that easy to mobilize millions of people coming out. But then, if thousands and thousands of people come up, that is equally not very good to Macau, especially if we are talking about our dependency is on the tourist revenue. And once, if we do have that kind of demonstration, tourist revenue, definitely it will drop. Like Hong Kong, and we are speculating the economy, we have a little problem, especially in terms of the household market.
Are compatriots over in Hong Kong ever going to come over and protest for Macau?
Well, strictly speaking, they are not allowed to come here because we do have, we do have examples for anyone who from the Democratic Party. They try to come over to Macau just for pressure, or even to go to casino. They are not allowed to come in. So, Macau young people, they got to depend on yourself, and with the social media's help, if and only if we are not blocked.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. It's very, very interesting times now and going forward, and we have a lot to look forward to in advance. I'm sure that we'll be speaking again very soon before the chief executive elections as well. Okay. August 25th, the elections themselves, and then we should have a new chief executive by the end of the year.
Yep.
Thank you again for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Much to see in the coming days and months, both in Macau and Hong Kong. Join us again next week for more TDM Talk Show. Good night.